Hey guys, Magic here, and wanted to show you guys what I've been working on. Right now I've got this Deadeye Mirror Arrow Summoner, and it's been working out pretty well. But like always, we're just going to start it off with a quick map. We'll do a Castle Rooms tier 12. Yeah. So, long story short with the build, it's pretty smooth Summoner build. You don't have to go Necromancer, which makes you feel a little bit cool. The clear speed is decent. And look at that, we got a breach. And then, so what you kind of do is you can go like hit the Val Haste, really low cooldown on our Mirror Arrow. We can keep up to like 7 to 8-ish Mirror Arrows at once. What's the, oh, that's the Malachi one. Yeah. We also use Summon Phantasms on kill, which is really nice because they help with the clear speed a bit, even though the build really doesn't lack any clear speed, at least compared to its other summoner counterparts. This map layout is really shit. What's nice is like how quickly we can mirror around the map. Alright, we're just gonna run to the boss. Keep the flesh offering up. Pretty good for these guys. Yeah, proximity shields are horrible against this build. So, yeah. So anyways, for single target, you have the option. So here I'm just going to do it. You normally don't need to do this at all. Like, you really don't need to. Against bosses, normally, you can just hit your Val Haste and your offering, and then you should be able to melt pretty much any boss. But we're just going to do this just because. Curse him, and he's gone. So, I guess the idea behind this particular build when it comes to the minions is, so if you've ever looked at Mirror Arrow or Blink Arrow, you'll notice the skill says like X percentage of more damage from minions. So for example, it says 75% on the Blink Arrow here. What does that mean? Well, on most minion skills, you don't get any type of multiplier like that. Um, I guess the point I'm trying to make is when you add damage to minions via auras per se, that damage is multiplied by, say, that more damage multiplier for minion damage. And so, since the base damage of Mirror Arrow is that big, and it's based off of my bow, which is Lionized Glare, that elemental damage is massive. Um, so that's why Mirror Arrow Blink Arrow hurts so much. I guess a good idea of how much DPS I'm doing is per Mirror Arrow Blink Arrow with minion damage and faster attacks. It's around 200k DPS per one of these little dudes. And so like as you can tell, if we can let's see if I can get spam it enough, we can get about 4 of each just for like a quick second, but most of the time you'll have around 7. And yes, that's over about 1,000,000 DPS. Um, but this damage is mostly scaled off of your auras. In fact, most of it is scaled off your auras. A little bit of minion damage from the tree helps. Um, but I'll be honest, it's not a big deal as far as like for example, these are literally the least damage you get. The most damage you're getting is from curses, auras, jewels, and skill effect duration. Um, the real idea is that the minions do all the work as a necromancer should be done, but the cool part about it is you get a bit of involvement with the build. You really are blink arrow mirroring and split arrowing. You get to do quite a bit more than other builds. And what's really nice is you can show off your MTXs. But I really don't like this aura. It's pretty obnoxious. And so what I like about this build is it's not a very traditional necromancer build, and it's seen a lot of nuances and changes. But in this particular patch, one of my favorite changes was the summon phantasms on skill, uh, which is cool because it allows us to add a couple more minions to it. In fact, more often than not, I don't actually switch to minion damage. Well, why is that? That's mostly because with summon phantasms, they gain every skill support that you do. Um, so what ends up happening is you summon 11 of them or something like that, and they all have like all your damage multipliers, and they end up like melting bosses for you. So the durations are normally like 15 seconds, but we have 90% increased effect or skill effect duration, which gets it really ridiculously high, like to 30 something seconds almost, and which is nice. And they never go away. So it's just a part of your build, and they move pretty fast by themselves. They're affected by all your auras and so on and so forth. Um, we don't use very many uniques in this build, except for the three, the weapon really not counting as far as unique armor parts. But Lionized Glare. That's because the minion accuracy for Mirror Arrow Blink Arrow is absolutely abysmal. Mirror Arrow Blink Arrow only benefits from two parts of your gear, and that's going to be your bow and your quiver. That's why they're kind of shit in every way, shape, and form without Lionized Glare. In fact, I've seen a couple people try to do it, like way back. Gouda tried to do one with Zophs and like Immolate and all that stuff, and it's cool. I'm not gonna say it didn't work either, but I mean, accuracy is just a massive part of your clear speed, your single target. Like, there's a lot of stuff it just the Lionized Glare does for it that no other bow can. So yeah. Anyways, the quiver we're using is this particular one. So I'm just gonna say this right now because when I ran this build last, the quiver played a big role, and that role was you took a penetrating arrow quiver because you can't give your minions pierced by the tree. Um, you'd either have to use the support gem or your quiver has to have it. So that's the best part. Having the implicit for pierce as an additional target is excellent. Um, and I'll move on to the next reason why. But I used to use a quiver that had the misery enchantment on it, or the essence craft for misery. I don't have a there it is. So the level 3 version of this particular one is projectiles pierce two additional targets. So as of right now, if you can roll the misery on a I think it's elder penetrating quiver, you'll get +4 pierce from your quiver. That would be the dream quiver. In fact, the dream quiver would have the three stats of that. It would have the +4 pierce, and you would also have of course, life and whatever else. But the other big damaging one is the elemental damage to attacks and the attack speed. With those two alone, those are your biggest DPS increases on your quiver for your minions. Attack speed and elemental damage with attacks. +1 pierce is normally fine. I clear fine with it. More of that means more clear speed. That's really all that means. More pierce, more clear speed. The other two stats are great for single target. That's why I prioritize them. I love this quiver for the life and everything, so I'm not really going to change it. Adding elemental damage on hit on your quiver is good. The problem is you don't want to fuck up your LE equilibrium. So on the quiver, you don't want anything but cold damage. We'll get into that in a second. We run a Victario's Influence. This particular chess piece, I just started running this now, and I'm really surprised a lot of people who had played this build did not run this before. And it probably has something to do with using mana. So in the past, this build has been more often than not run as a um, Eldritch Battery. So, Eldritch Battery, which gives your ES to your mana, because you would normally reserve the two auras of Wrath and Anger. So, what I ended up doing was getting and because I'm not a Necromancer, there is a bit of a damage disparity here, which I can't quite tell if Tailwind offsets it, because I know that Tailwind affects the minions. Um, as you can see, what I don't know is how much damage it's giving them. I guess you could just type in a 10% more multiplier. But long story short, I run Haste. Haste is given to us by taking Victario's influence and taking all of the ore nodes on the tree. Haste is a massive more damage multiplier to our um, to our mirror arrow and blink arrow. Um, and that generally is the reason we run it, to be honest with you. The AoE is also really good because it's really easy to get out of range of these guys. But with this thing here, it's going to basically make our radius the screen. If you leave the screen, then you do have a bit of a weird one, and that's definitely something you can do. The radius, for example, would be from where I'm standing to around where Navali is now. So pretty much up to right here. But for example, if I put a minion here and I run over here, then they're no longer in aura radius. And that's not something we want. So more aura radius is better. But I mean, in most single target situations, you do want to be moving around a lot, at least within that circle. But you can actually just stack them on top of you. And that's really all you need to do. Um, so, anyways, Victario's Influence is an excellent choice. I really don't think there's another chess piece you can run instead of this. If you do decide to go EB Mom, you can. This actually does give you a little bit of energy shield to run it. In fact, around level 100, it is something you can do. It is 3 skill points, and it would allow you to run another 50% aura. And there are many options for that. I was actually thinking about quite a few. The only other one that would give you a more damage multiplier would be Hatred. But you're using cold damage for your Elite Equilibrium, so that'd be a little bit weird. Um, so it's not that quite required, but you can do it. Anyways, we run then Doedri's Damning. So since the build has very few uniques, ideally you want the +1 curse here, but that's not easy. So that's it. This is obvious for what purpose it serves. The rest of this shit is rare. The only other thing that would I consider like a best in slot item would be a bone helmet with the more with the minion increased damage. You want 40%. You want one similar to like this, but the dream, like the goat, the one you really want is gonna be this elder minion damage immolate. So with those on it, not only does it make it a 6 link for your minion, but it's gonna let you run somewhere in the realm of another like 270%, 270k damage per mirror L blink here. That's if you could 6 link both of these, which, and I'll be honest with you, those damage numbers are becoming pointless at that point. Like you're doing so much damage, it doesn't matter anymore. Um, but that's, yeah, relevant. Besides that, I guess what I really do want to show you guys is the choice for Ascendancy. Now, here's the sucky part about it. These you must take. They are obviously the better ones. When you're leveling, you take Gathering Winds. When you finally transition over, you take Fast and Deadly. Um, most of these make no impact on your build at all. But I guess the difference is this. Mirror Blink Arrow has a 3-second cooldown. With this on, it's a second and a half. And by a second and a half, I mean literally like every second. Like it's just that good. And so I guess people are normally wondering like, well, Necromancer is better. You have more skill effect duration, and you can get the enchant for the 40% reduced cooldown. Well, that's only for Blink Arrow. There's actually not another way to reduce the cooldown of the other two besides using like a Harbinger unique, which still doesn't achieve the same multiplier that you would consider this to be, because it also gives you the 100% reduced cooldown on both Mirror Arrow and Blink Arrow, making this extremely like powerful. This is like if you could summon 4 totems and then you got +3 totems. Like this node is a +3 totem node, because with Necromancer we can get about 4, uh, sometimes mostly 4, but a lot of times it ends up being 3 out at a time. With this one, you can get close to 7. Um, I'm sorry, close to 8. So you see, it stays at 8, and then it just kind of flickers off pretty quickly. That's up here. So that's the importance of that node, and in my honest opinion, it makes it a much easier and flexible build to take. Um, Playing as Witch makes traveling an absolute bitch, and it also really sucks that you need more decks as the Necromancer. Like when I mean you need more decks, the last time I played this build, you needed like you had 40 decks, like at level 66 when you transition, and this fucking bow needs 212. It's a fucking nightmare. So with this build, you get it pretty much all on the tree, and you get like one item with dex. Boom, you're holding Lionized Glare. um but anyways, the rest of the build is life. Literally all the life nodes you can grab. This build gets around 200% life later on. Right now I'm sitting at a pretty decent amount. 170-ish% life. The real pain for this build, it has absolutely no defensive mechanics except for life. The movement speed from Tailwind, Mirror All Blink Arrow, a little bit of evasion, so you get like a good 1,000 evasion, so like a 50% chance to dodge. And this guy here, which makes your minions blind. It says 5%. Anything that survives like the first couple of hits instantly gets blind. This is excellent for bosses, but it's not all that crazy for mob clearing. So yeah, the type of real jewels you want to get are something similar to this. X to Y, whatever damage, 20% increased minion damage when you use a minion skill. That is far more than 16% that you get from jewels, normal jewels. But that's kind of that. The skills we use are Summon Phantasm on kill, switch for minion damage, Ellie Focus, Blink Arrow, faster attacks, Ellie damage, Mirror Arrow, minion damage, faster attacks, and Ellie damage, and then GMP for the swap, which I'm going to do now. And then you take as auras Haste, Anger, Wrath, and Empower. So these three auras by themselves are insane. They're all massive damage multipliers for the build. Minions have an innate 5% chance to crit. Anything that survives these minions for a good 2 or 3 seconds just gets ignited. And the duration for ignite is 4 seconds. That's why Immolate is good on the helmet. The rest of these are rares. You want to get on these rares. You want to get mana, life, and dexterity if you still need it. That's pretty much it. Helmet needs to be a bone helmet. Oh, I wanted to talk about this unique because I've seen it on a couple of Mirror Arrow builds. Excuse this this stash. Maybe I don't have it. It's the Speaker's Wreath. There it is. So the Speaker's Wreath is a really cool helmet that I initially thought was like the best in slot for this build. Wrong in every way. And it's not just because of the Shaper Elder stuff. This helmet by itself is better than this. There is not any amount of dexterity you can have that would make this worth it. Like, this helmet not only reduces your life by not giving you those juicy life and res nodes, but it just honestly doesn't feel like it was meant for this build. Like, it gives you dex scaling on minion stuff. It almost feels like this was meant for a summoner that started on this side of the tree. But no, it's just not good enough. It gives you the skill effect duration that you really so desperately need in this type of build, but it's not enough. I hate to say it, but this is probably the worst thing you could wear. Um, it's just not worth it. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, that's what I meant to say. The 2% increased attack speed, like you would need like 500 dex for this not to be better than the bone helmet, but to achieve enough attack speed to kind of deal with your running flesh offering or not. I.e., it's pretty trash. I wouldn't run this. It's not a bad item. It's just not for this build. Um, I think it was definitely meant for something else, just not for this. So yeah, that's kind of one thing I wanted to say. I don't think this helmet is worth it. A lot of people were running it, at least that I saw. Um, so I think that's it. I can't really think of much else to really point out besides your on your tree, your damage multipliers being curses or related stuff and minion damage, and not really minion damage all that much. Oh yeah, Val Haste. So Val Haste was something that I didn't see on a lot of builds. Val Haste is amazing. Not only is it really cool in this chess piece, but when you flip on your Val Haste, which you get from pack to pack, by the way, it makes your minions go nuts. And so, like, it's not something you can do all the time. So it's not something I factored into any of the DPS numbers I just gave you. Um, but it is a big clear speed boost for the build because you can literally kill the first pack and then you chain it all the way through the map. So with that plus this bad boy, you're doing a shit ton of attack speed for your minions. The two curses we run are going to be Curse on Hit, AoE Weakness, Proj Weakness. So these two are insane. Proj Weakness being like a 51% more damage multiplier for the build and giving you more pierces. Um, which the more pierces is nice, but it kind of defeats the purpose of pierce. This is really more for damage. Like, you want to pierce because you want to pierce initially. You don't pierce because you want to, or you don't want to have to rely on cursing and then piercing. So that's why I would say still get the penetrating arrow quiver. Um, and then LE weakness because we are doing the two main, or we're doing fire damage and lightning damage. We LE equilibrium cold, and we get the cold damage from, say, a ring. This is why we run Generosity. Generosity is going to turn off the damage that we gain, making our split arrow deal only cold and fizz damage, which makes then our minions who do a massive amount of fire and electric damage. So on this tooltip, it doesn't even tell you their damage, not even close, which is kind of annoying. Um, but yeah, they do a massive amount of lightning and fire damage, and that's why we run LE Equilibrium with our split arrow setup. Um, and that's kind of the idea. The last thing that we're grabbing on our tree is going to be Jewel Socket here, these life nodes, and these life nodes. Oh, wait, here, these here. Um, and that's where we have around 200% life. There's just nothing else to grab for the build. That's why we're grabbing so much fucking life. But one thought I had, and that was if this build was going to make it somewhere to 95 or something, we could take this here, Arcane Focus, take the Foresight, and then grab this. And that's going to be the, what's that? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. I could do that now. In fact, I might go test that, see the numbers on that. If I do that by level 90, I will have a fourth aura, which might be Discipline. I don't know. Um, and that would be pretty cool. But I guess the point here is the reason we would do any of that is because this build also makes a really good Auramancer for a squad. Um, it doesn't give you a shit ton of purities and all that stupid shit, but what it does give you is a lot of X to Y damage and movement speed and attack speed. So I'm not saying this is a main support, um, but it gets all the damage parts of support right. Um, and it also taunts. So I would say it's an excellent build to kind of just run in a squad if you're running with people, especially if you're running with bow users. It's a really cool build to run. Just because the taunt and then all the auras you give to your squad and your good aura radius, it's just why not? So I'm not saying it's a pure support build, but with all the curse on hit, with your split arrow and all the auras, it's a really good support build. But yeah, besides that, the build is kind of done. The last things we're getting are either these life nodes, or what I'm going to test next is see if grabbing this max ES and this Eldritch battery is worth it. Then we could drop our mana flasks, but to be honest, there is no reason to run other flasks. Um, and I know that I know a lot of people hate mana flasks. I like mana flasks, and in this particular situation, we run a hybrid and a mana flask to just kind of like never have to run out of these. You have enough mana regen on the build where if you did run out of mana in a 1v1 scenario, and that's if something ever survived you for that long, it would be fine. I've done up to tier 15 maps with this build. I haven't done Guardians yet. I did these on my Trapper, and so I think I think the build can do Guardians easily. I don't think the build can do Minotaur. Minotaur just he just kind of destroys anything anally upon entering, and so the build kind of has to be geared more towards armor and whatnot. Hydra would be like a cakewalk. I might give that a try, get that recorded, to see how that goes. Hydra's probably the more. It's not. I'm not gonna say. I'm gonna say that Hydra's probably the easier one, just because it's meant for bow users. But yeah. I'll probably hit you guys up with that. Um, that was my GGxMirrorMancer build. And if you guys do have any questions, let me know. The build is pretty much done. Any feedback, though, would be appreciated. So thank you guys for watching. Definitely check out my guide that I put in the form for my VD Trapper. It's a pretty sick guide. And thanks for watching. Later, guys.